Well, there's a famous business strategy called the Osborne effect. Osborne was a very successful computer company that had really healthy sales and order books until they announced to the world that their next model out next year would be bigger, better, faster and much cheaper. Well, instantly people just stopped buying this year's models and existing orders were cancelled, as all they wanted was to wait for the next model out next year. Osborne, by the way, went bust. Well, BMW announces the imminent arrival of solid-state batteries with up to 1,000-mile range and charging in 5 minutes. Does this announcement do BMW any good at all, or is it merely pushing people back, saying, well, don't buy anything outdated today, wait for next time, there might be solid-state batteries? Well, I'm Dave. I'm looking into whether the legacy auto are bringing the Osborne effect down onto themselves. Well, we are in the middle of the weirdest car market in history. On one hand, car makers are finally rolling out futuristic electric cars that they've been promising for years. But on the other, reports show that for some brands, EVs are starting to pile up in dealers. At the same time, millions of people with perfectly fine aging petrol cars are just refusing to buy anything new. Now, this isn't a coincidence. It turns out the promise of the perfect car of tomorrow is paradoxically what's stalling the entire car market today, creating a traffic jam of pure hesitation. So what's really going on? Let's break down how we got here and what it all means to you. Well, the core of the problem is simple. A huge chunk of car buyers, they're completely frozen. They're stuck in a valley between two massive cliffs. On one side is the traditional petrol car, a technology that has served us well for a century, but now feels like it has a final expiry date. On the other side is the electric car, the promised future, but it's a future that for many still feels like it's got some way to go. This paralysis is a classic case of the Osborne effect. It's what happens when a company hypes up a future product so much that it convinces customers to stop buying the one that's available right now. Car makers have spent the last 5 years screaming from the rooftops about their all-electric plans, showing off wild concept cars and setting ambitious goals of 500 or 1,000-mile range to kill the petrol engine. They succeeded. They convinced the public a revolution is coming. The unintended side effect? They also convince millions that buying any car right now is probably a bad move. It feels like buying the last iPhone model the week before the new one launches. And the data horrendously backs this up. The average age of a car on UK roads, according to 2024 data, has climbed to a record 10.4 years, the oldest it's ever been on record. People are clinging to their old cars longer than ever, because the path forward is just, well, I suppose foggy is a good word. It's not that the market's collapsing. In fact, global sales are inching upwards slightly and global EV sales are booming. Well, the first piece of this puzzle is what I call the EV waiting game. For years, we've been told the next generation of EVs will have longer ranges, faster charging and, most importantly, lower prices. And it's not the media telling us this. It's the manufacturers. The car makers can't help but pre-announce these amazing new models years in advance, which creates a massive incentive for buyers to just wait years. Why buy a 2025 EV with a 300-mile range when a 2027 model is rumoured to have 500-mile range, charges in 5 minutes, and is going to cost less? This fear of missing out, combined with rapid tech depreciation, makes buying a current EV feel a bit like a risky financial bet. It isn't just theory. While EV sales have grown, the explosive hockey stick growth that many predicted has not quite hit the heights everyone in the trade hoped for. Market penetration is hovering around 25%, meaning nearly 1 in 4 new cars sold in the UK is electric, and that's great. That's a huge jump from a few years ago, and it's worth noting that the global share is just slightly lower, around 23%. And sales took a sudden leap in the UK when the new car grant arrived just a month or so ago, showing how sensitive this part of the market is to price. Well, this slowdown has forced car makers to publicly pump the brakes on their own hype. Companies like Mercedes and Volvo have pushed back their deadlines for going all electric, admitting, well, the transition will take longer than they had hoped. Now they're talking a lot more about plug-in hybrids as a bridge, which is really a concession to the fact that the all-electric future isn't arriving as fast as their marketing departments had promised them. So if buyers are skittish about today's EVs, you'd think they'd just keep on buying new petrol cars. But they're not. This is the other side of the paradox, the petrol car dilemma. A potential buyer looks at a shiny new petrol-powered SUV and can't help but wonder, am I buying a fossil? With governments and car companies all talking about phasing out fossil fuels, there's a real fear that a new petrol car will have the resale value of a mobile phone in 5 or 10 years. This isn't just about the environment, it's a cold, hard financial calculation. Will there even be strong demand for a used gas guzzler in 2030? Will petrol stations still be common? Will new taxes make it a pain to own? See, nobody really knows. And when you're faced with that much uncertainty, the safest move is actually no move at all. So instead of choosing a new petrol car or a new EV, a growing wave of people in the middle are choosing the middle ground, hybrids. So in 2024, hybrid sales in the UK shot up massively. The adverts all claimed wild fuel economy up to about 500 miles per gallon without any range anxiety or charging headaches. And a high price tag is avoided like they have in EVs because these are cheaper. For many, hybrids feel like the safest bet in a chaotic market, a way to modernise without taking that huge final leap of faith. But then we discover those 500 mile per gallon figures are simply the manufacturer's lies. Back to Dieselgate, isn't it? And the government has now withdrawn all EV support for PHEVs, classing them the same as a petrol car. By the way, if you're getting any value out of this breakdown and want to stay ahead of the curve on the biggest shifts in the auto world, do me a favour, just hit that like and subscribe button. It does help the channel a ton, and make sure you won't miss what's coming next. But there's a third and arguably biggest reason people aren't buying. The brutal, simple truth about money. Cars have become absurdly expensive. For the first time in history, the average price for a new car in the UK has climbed to very nearly £40,000. Just 5 years ago, that was way under 30,000. And it's not just the price. With interest rate for new car loans sitting around 6 or 8% for buyers with a very, very good credit, the monthly payments have become suffocating. For anyone with less than perfect credit, those rates easily jump into the double digits. You combine a record high price for the car with high interest rates, and you get a monthly payment that's simply off the table for a huge number of people. This affordability crisis is the wall that many buyers are hitting, no matter what kind of car they buy. Wealthier households are still buying, but they're buying the high-end EVs and the luxury SUVs, which is actually what pulls the average transaction price even higher. But for the average person, the maths just doesn't work anymore. Well, the result is what analysts call the good enough car phenomenon. People are looking at their paid off 6-8-year-old car in the driveway, and even if it needs a few repairs, that's still way cheaper than taking on a new £300-500 monthly payment. The old car is good enough. It runs, it's reliable enough, and it doesn't come with a soul-crushing loan. This is a huge reason the average age of cars on the road just keeps going up. It's a totally rational response to an irrational market. So what you need to do now is just add all of this up, and the picture of our stalled-out car market becomes crystal clear. The market isn't actually collapsing, but it is stuck in a low gear. Millions of buyers who took out an EV lease will simply replace that EV with another. But the new car sales are increasing only slowly. And you have millions of buyers being told by the industry itself to wait for the perfect, affordable EV that's just around the corner. The Osborne effect in action. This makes them hesitant to buy an EV today. At the same time, all this talk about an electric future makes them terrified to invest in a new petrol car, fearing it will be obsolete before it's even paid off. And holding all of this in place is this massive affordability crisis that's priced much of the middle class out of the new car market entirely, forcing them to just keep their old cars running. Well, this creates a feedback loop of hesitation. It's not limited to EVs. Petrol, diesel cars, they're also affected, seeing sales drop year by year, often at double-digit rates. PHEVs, once booming at ridiculous rates, are now slowing rapidly. Car makers see the slowing ICE and EV growth, so they hedge their bets and slow down their manufacturing rates with reduced shifts, worker layoffs and factory closures. Even the classic petrol-powered VW Golf is cutting back. This has hit the entire industry. This mixed messaging confuses consumers even more and confirms their decision just to wait it out. It's a market-wide sales jam, all created by a paradox. The promise of a perfect future is stopping many people from buying anything today. The only thing that will break this gridlock is when one or two things happens. Either that future finally arrives, with the general public finally seeing that truly affordable, no-compromise EVs are already here. Or it'll be when car makers are forced with overflowing stock piling up to make today's cars even more affordable. Give them away, and it's a win-win for buyers. Until then, for millions of people, the smartest move is to simply hold on to what they've got. I'm Dave.